Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Salt AI video newsletter, where I'm going to cover what is new in the AI space and with ComfyUI and Salt, our platform. This week, we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to be jumping. We'll start with covering some generative AI. OpenAI teased a synthetic voice model that they've had internally for a while, but are worried about the impacts of releasing it and how Google is starting to fight back. And then we'll spend most of today talking about what seems to be the theme of the week, which is agents and how language models can be integrated into everyday processes to supercharge teams. Lastly, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what's new in ComfyUI and what's coming next from Salt. Getting right in, OpenAI released a blog post where they talked about navigating the challenges and opportunities of synthetic voices. They developed Voice Engine internally late 2022 and use it to power ChatGPT's voice feature. They worked with a small group of partners to test out this technology and were super impressed. It could take a small clip of reference audio.
Force is a push or pull that can make an object move, stop,
and then use it to generate pretty much anything in that same voice and intonation.
Salt also makes sure we stay hydrated, which means there is enough water in our body for it to properly function.
The quality is astounding. This technology could be used for providing reading assistance, translating content, reaching global communities, supporting people who are nonverbal, helping patients recover their voice, and more. With that said, they recognize that generating speech that resembles people's voices has serious risks, especially in an election year. As a result, they're holding off on broad deployment of synthetic voice technology until there's some sort of voice authentication experience. This brings up a really interesting debate around when should technologies be released. This debate has been ongoing related to large language models like GPT and is being fought fiercely between the open source community and those who think it's best for private companies or governments to hold on to these technologies without broad public release. Personally, I don't see how we really figure out how to handle all of these without many people involved. And so tend to bias towards the open source side, but I do think there's going to need to be governmental support here. We're already starting to see that. Tennessee is looking towards creating a first of its kind AI law addressing deepfakes and voice clones with their Elvis Act. Another piece of interesting news related to OpenAI, Logan Kilpatrick, the ex-head of developer relations for OpenAI, recently shared that he is going to join Google to lead their product for AI Studio and support the Gemini API. Google is not going to go down without a fight. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about language models and agents, the big theme of the week. Databricks released a new large language model, open source, giving the power to the people. They were excited because it handily beat open source models like Llama 2, even beat GPT 3.5, a closed model on most benchmarks, and is built off of the mixture of experts framework, which you can think about as a single model having many experts within it, leading to a very large model itself that only uses one expert at a time, letting you have your cake and eat it too in terms of speed and performance. One of the big reasons I'm excited about this model, and many other researchers as well, is it seems to perform really well in retrieval augmented generation. This is really important when you need a language model to have context of your own system or specific data that may not be in its training set, and particularly useful for agents. I'm not the only one talking about agents right now. Andrew Ng, the co-founder of Coursera and the founder of deeplearning.ai and the AI Fund, spoke at Sequoia Capital's AI Ascent about what's next for AI agentic workflows, pointing out that when you give these language models tools and even sometimes multi-agents working together, you can get vastly better performance than just using the model out of the box with a single request, which is called zero-shot learning. He really emphasized 4 key parts of creating agents. 1, creating reflection like humans do every day, giving language models an ability to check what they've outputted and see if they should fix it. Second, tool use like code execution, being able to send emails, generate images, or do research. as things that could really empower language models. Third, planning, a way for language models to create a plan of attack before getting right into it, similar to reflection, but a little bit different. And lastly, multi-agent collaboration, showing big improvements in benchmarks across many different realms when you use agents that work together rather than just a single one. A project that explored that multi-agent collaboration is GPT Swarm, a project focusing on using graphs to design inter-agent collaboration. You can see why this might be exciting for the SALT team, who is already working on a graph-based platform and starting to introduce language models to it. This is definitely something we're keeping an eye on, especially because Jürgen Schmidhuber, one of the most prolific machine learning researchers of all time, is starting to work on this project as well. Replit just released a blog post about how they're using language models for code repair, which also makes use of some of the key themes Andrew and G talked about, like reflection, tool use, and planning. You can see this really interesting showcase in their announcement of Replit for Teams, where they have an AI service integration come up with a plan, and it goes through multiple steps in order to create actionable next steps. They're not the only one working on a similar process. Researchers from Princeton announced their software engineering agent, which vastly outperformed naive GPT-4 and Claude 3 by designing a new agent-computer interface. This specialized terminal allowed these agents to open, scroll, and search through files, edit specific lines, and write and execute tests. This is tool use in action. Their key insight is that language models require carefully designed agent-computer interfaces similar to how humans like good UI design. To me, this shows a huge possibility for a totally new space where UI is focused not just for people, but also agents using these tools. Another similar piece of research came out this week called Magis, which is focused on how multi-agents, which Andrew also mentioned, could be used to solve a similar problem. And they actually outperformed Devin, the sensationalized release that was purported to do the same thing, by having a team of language models that act as project managers, repository custodians, developers, and QA in order to get something that really works well for it. It's 3 times faster than Devin and was able to resolve about 15% of the problems that it faced automatically. Imagine having 15% of your problems solved without needing to even go look into them. That's huge. You might be asking yourself, how can we make sure these solutions are actually accurate and not hallucinations? If you are, that's great, because we know hallucinations is a big risk for these language models. However, Google DeepMind released this paper about long-form factuality and proposed that language model agents could actually be used to evaluate whether something is factual with a tool called Search Augmented Factuality Evaluator, or SAFE. They show that SAFE agrees with crowdsourced human annotators 72% of the time. And when they disagree, SAFE is actually correct in 76% of cases, while being 20 times cheaper than human annotators. My takeaway here is that we're really just getting started with applied language models. And it's not just text. Weights and Biases released a tool called OpenAI, where they're building UI components with language models and keeping humans in the loop. You describe UI using your imagination, it gets rendered live. You can even ask for changes right there. One last piece on language models. Typically, there's limitations to how many people can even use these tools because you need powerful GPUs to run them. Justine Tunney, a prolific software engineer and activist, actually just released this paper as well, showing that she could now get Llama 2, the open source language model, to run faster on CPUs, which are much cheaper than on powerful GPUs. While this is brand new research, I'm sure many people are going to dig into this. Because if NVIDIA GPUs are no longer the bottleneck to applying very powerful language models, we could see an explosion in adoption coming very soon. In the ComfyUI and SALT AI world, we're seeing some updates in the ManoDoco server where, with things like IP adapter style transfer, where you can make sure that the images you generate match a style of a certain input image. ControlNet reference, which allows more control over video generation, and a workflow that allows users to create moving landscapes. There was also new research called Annie Portrait, which allows you to take a single image and a driving video to create a talking head or singing even. All from a single image. And someone took this and applied it into ComfyUI so you can use it directly in a workflow. This week also was big for the Salt AI team, making our biggest release to date to the open source with the documentation of 1,600 plus ComfyUI nodes. This post got a lot of traction in the ComfyUI subreddit, becoming the third most upvoted post of the month in just a couple days. There was really great discussion on this post that I'd recommend checking out. We followed it up with an open source release of the nodes and workflows we used to generate that documentation automatically with language models in a ComfyUI workflow. It even got the attention of Comfy Anonymous himself, who added it into the ComfyUI examples page, listed first under documentation. It's a really exciting time to be working with ComfyUI, and we're not the only ones who think so. People on Reddit and on Twitter see ComfyUI as a better way to assemble Python, and even though there are tools like Langflow and Flowise, the community behind ComfyUI and Salt may be what has it win in the end. I hope you guys got a lot out of this week, and I'll see you next time.